Hey, welcome back to The Long Game. Again, this is a podcast about consistency, patience, and building a life that compounds over time. Again, this is a podcast about outdoor sports, everyday health, and staying active for decades and not just for a week or a season. And I'm your host, Mark. And today I'm joined by my good friend, Eric, owner and founder and race director for the Elevation Culture Race Series. This episode is part of a special series where we're highlighting people that are operating at the top of their organizations, but they also chase big goals, whether it's an Ironman, an ultra marathon, or maybe climbing the tallest mountain peaks in the world. And our guests, they do it all. And we're here to find out what keeps them going. Now, this series is sponsored by our friends at Basecamp. If you haven't heard of Basecamp, this is a company that specializes in Filipino-inspired freeze-dried camp food. Try their Arroscaldo or their Champorado on your next outdoor adventure. Thanks, guys, from Basecamp. Okay, on to our episode. Guys, if you're driving, you may want to pull over or buckle up because this one's coming in hot. Now, Eric, before 2008, I had no idea what triathlon even was. I'd never even walked into a bike shop that had triathlon stuff. Okay, maybe that's not totally true. I had heard about Ironman at least, and I had a friend at work who was training for one, but I didn't ask him much about it. All I knew that was that he was all in, right? You see the guys wearing the Oakley shades, he's constantly on the treadmill or talking about the Ironman, right? And to put it into perspective, and you may know this, only 0.02% of people in the entire world have ever completed and competed in an Ironman triathlon. So that's roughly a 1.5 million people worldwide. Even more rare are the people that do more than one. And then the most rare breed of all of these guys are the ones that have claimed what you call a legacy status. So this allows them to compete in the Ironman World Championship. Yeah, the big one in Kona. After they've completed 12 Ironman races in 12 or more years. And I think that's changed over the years, but that's how I know it today. Now, I'm opening with this because when I first started triathlon, I had exactly one friend in my group of 16 of my closest buddies from high school. And these are the guys that are closer to me than some of my blood relatives. And it's actually giving me goosebumps, to be honest. Today, you're going to hear his story, what got him off the couch and into the triathlon world, and how his personal journey to becoming an Ironman ended up sparking my own journey. We're going to dig into what it looks like to balance it all. And sometimes balance doesn't exist, but the sacrifices that he's had to make in his personal life, the success in his professional life that got him to the top of the gaming industry, and the reality of trying to stay healthy, right? And playing the long game and trying to maintain his lifestyle as an Ironman triathlete. So with that said, I'm extremely excited to introduce my brother, one of the most talented artists I know, and the godfather of my triathlon journey, Ryan Lastimosa. Ryan, welcome to the Long Game Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. So I'm Ryan. A little bit about myself. Grew up in San Diego. Went to high school with Mark. Just met Eric a few minutes ago. So thanks for having me forward. And, looking forward to chatting about, all things, triathlon and this whole journey with endurance sports and staying healthy and, balancing your career and, executing the long game, right? What does that mean? So, my background is I did grow up in San Diego. We went to high school with Mark. I have been a lifelong martial artist, so I guess I've somewhat been into sports. I really suck at ball sports. So, I really,
True.
yeah, I was horrible at ball sports, but I tried. But then I realized that combat was a thing that I was kind of okay at. So I went down the whole like MMA martial arts route. And, alongside from doing like martial arts and stuff, I've always been an artist. I've always been sketching. I've always been drawing. Um, as a kid, I loved films, cartoons, video games. So that's what I made my career in. I made my career in first starting off in feature film visual effects. So I've done a bunch of movies. I've done a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones too. Um, but yeah, started off doing feature films. And yeah, you could probably just look into IMDb and see the stuff that I've worked on. But after working on film, I decided to take a career jump and move into gaming. And I've been a lifelong gamer, and I was thinking like, maybe I do like in my career, maybe I do a little bit of film and then maybe I do a little bit of video games. But then I realized that my work life balance like absolutely sucked in the film industry. It was horrible. And when I moved into game development, the work life balance was so much more manageable and fun. Uh, so I just dove into game development and I've never looked back ever since. Now, as like an entertainment professional or a professional like commercial artist, um, usually health and work ethic and the schedule itself forces you to remain indoors. So I needed to find something that was a good balance between working behind the computer for hours on end.
Hmm.
Uh, so one thing that I was doing for a while was yeah, martial arts, mixed martial arts mostly. Um, so my background's been in Jeet Kune Do, wrestled a little bit in high school, um, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Sambo, Muay Thai. I mean, the MMA stuff, right? I got sick and tired of going into meetings with black eyes and like bloody noses and messed up knuckles. And I was like, I need to do something different. So I started cycling. I've always been somewhat of a mountain biker, but then I started cycling a little bit seriously, and then that's what led me into like this world of endurance sports. Yeah. So I mean, we could dive a little bit more into like some of the details of other things, but yeah, that's a little bit about who I am.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ryan. Eric, I know you've got a ton of questions for Ryan, but you kind of came into endurance sports with kind of a similar background in graphic design, right?
Yeah, it's so funny, Ryan. Again, we just met, but I felt like I was like listening to a mirror talk back at me because yeah, it's funny. And I wonder what correlation this is, right? With creatives, me being a creative, when I was a kid, I used to draw and I always used to want to work for Disney, right? That was my dream when I
Mm,
was a kid.
yeah.
And, I was an artist where I can just look something and draw it and then it moved into graphic design and then obviously creating some of the industry's biggest and best stuff for marketing and things like that for events. And it's like, man, I wonder again, what do you think in terms of creativity? Was it an outlet, right, that you needed to like, oh, I could draw, I can create, but there's more here that I can create for myself maybe health wise or just like I said, like an outlet. Do you think that there's something there with creatives wanting to get into endurance sports?
I think I think that the answer to that is consistency in muscle memory and just getting after it every day because just like yourself, my objective initially was to become a 2D animator for Disney.
Mm,
And my whole mindset getting into it was like, yeah, I want to do cartoons. Like that's what I want to do. And I thought it was awesome until I started doing it. And then I
Yeah.
realized like, yo, this is no, I'm not gonna 24 drawings per second. It's like you do that many drawings, there's technique, there's a process to it. There's keyframing and there's in betweening. And after learning how to do it and doing it in school for a fair amount of time, I realized like this isn't it. Like, I'm not going to do this, man. I had an instructor. His name is Ruben Apodaca. He was one of the. He was an animator on the Jungle Book. Um,
wow.
I think he was one of the guys that was Yeah, he was one of the guys that was behind the creation of Alvin and the Chipmunks. And working with him, being under his tutelage in school, I just noticed that when he jumped on a light board, I don't know if you guys remember how they used to do it
Mm-hmm.
back in the day where
Mm-hmm.
they had a light board and they would animate. He had this permanent like hunch where you can tell like he's had like a black belt masterful craft in like 2D
Yeah.
animation. And when
Right.
he would draw, it was just so masterful and it was like so precise, but you can tell it was like years and years and years and years behind that light box. And I remember thinking, it's like, man, this is endurance. Even before getting into
Mm.
endurance, I was thinking, man, this guy has like the muscle memory of like someone who's been doing this for decades. And I remember having a few assignments and then having to do the drawings. And I remember thinking like, oh man, this is a lot of work. And this whole thing with 3D started popping up, like 3D modeling, 3D art, like
Right.
CG was like starting to come back up or
Right.
starting to make its appearance. So I dove heavily into that as opposed to 2D animation. So, to answer your question, it's I think that the need to like create or the need to be consistent about a craft. I think that's the kind of thing that brings a bunch of like creatives and endurance athletes together. It's like you have a goal and you want to put a goal in front of yourself, right? It's the journey to get there, I think, is the thing that I think is what a lot of people share when it comes to creativity and endurance sports. It's the canvas is like achieving the goal, right? So yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think I think that's what got me into it is the setting the goal and achieving it.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the projects that I remember you talking to us about, right? I mean, these are really long, like movies or video games, right? And it is an endurance sport within itself, right? To put in all of the work and the detail that goes into like one frame or one page or one thing, right? Like for you, for example, in Call of Duty, you did all the weapons, right? And so I can only imagine that just the design of the weapon and then getting it to animate. I mean, that took a ton of time, and that's just an important piece, but it's one piece of a greater project that again takes you know several months or even years, right, to produce. And it does so much like tie into what we do as endurance athletes, right? Because we don't train today and then show up to a race tomorrow. Some people do that,
Some people
but
do.
yeah, people do it. But talk to us a little bit more about how you transitioned from cycling into triathlon, because that's kind of a big leap, right? Like some cyclists stick to cycling, right? And they never make that leap into a triathlon, or runners stick to running and marathoning and ultra marathoning, but they never make that leap. Or maybe they do go into triathlon and test it out, right? And then they're like, no, that's not for me. And then they come back. Like what kind of got you there, and then what made it stick?
Well, as I refer to cycling in my early days, um, it was more just jumping on a mountain bike and then not even going for mountain bike rides. It was, I was commuting to school on a mountain bike for a while. And I think commuting to school on a mountain bike or just commuting anywhere, just having to rely on a bike for transportation, I've noticed that it really gives people a better appreciation for bikes. Like anyone who's ever commuted or has been like a bike messenger, you can tell it's like, oh yeah, you know what's up. You know what it is to have to wake up in the middle or wake up early in the morning, hop on the bike in the rain and the cold,
Hmm.
and just go for a ride. But you have to go for a ride because you have to get to work, you have to get to school, right? That was the thing that just initially for me, I couldn't afford a car, so I was on a bike, and that got me into like the habit of cycling when I was uncomfortable, right? Um, and as I mentioned before, of doing martial arts for a long time, in my life, I needed something different, and to go into the journey from uh, martial arts or anything else that I've done to get into endurance sports was uh, like it was the perfect storm of like life uh, events that got me into wanting to do triathlon. Um, so the first thing was back in 2009. I got diagnosed with severe obstructive sleep apnea. Uh, yeah, I just I needed to sleep with a BiPAP machine. So if you're familiar with the CPAP is the Darth Vader mask that you put on to
Right.
breathe for you. I
Right.
had to use a BiPAP machine,
Yeah.
and a BiPAP is both it's both in and out pressure. So it had to
Wow.
breathe for me when I was sleeping because my uh, sleep apnea was so severe. So I had blockages. I had adenoids, tonsils, and my nose have been broken multiple times from it was from fighting when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so I got sick of just having to travel, with this machine. I tried everything else. I tried like the retaining mouthpiece, uh, just so I can get a good night's sleep. Um, and also in addition to that, I was becoming overweight. I was carrying a lot of pounds. I was smoking heavily. I was drinking heavily. Um, you know, living the life in Hollywood and like games and film.
For sure.
You like to party, right? It's like I still like bourbon to this day, but I had to reel it all in. So I went and got a procedure done where I got my they call it a U triple P, where they take out your adenoids, your tonsils, and they cut out your upper palate. And I did that because yeah, I was just sick of relying on hardware for me to get a full night's sleep. Um, so recovery for that was absolutely horrible. Um, and as I was recovering from it, it it was Christmas of 2009, and I was hanging out with my uncle Rudy, uh, who suffered from Parkinson's disease, uh, and we were sitting at a Christmas party for our family while everyone's having a good time partying and getting drunk. Him and I are sitting there and we're flipping through channels on the TV. I'm fully medicated because I'm like I'm just like I'm on a bunch of painkillers. He's on his medication for tremors, and we're flipping through the channels, and the Ironman World Championship pops up on the television, and we start watching it for a little bit. I'm in kind of like in a little haze, and I'm like, huh, I've seen this before. Well, what are they really doing? And then I got the distances, and they mentioned, yeah, 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a marathon afterwards. And I was like, this looks stupid. Why would anybody want to do that? Like, this looks dumb.
Right. Right.
And, we're just sitting there like, just in our haze, just watching it for a little bit. And my uncle goes, huh, that looks like fun. And then, me being in the haze that I was in and me being in this kind of a funk where, still recovering from the surgery, um, I started to think to myself, like, hey, my uncle has Parkinson's. He's probably not going to be able to bounce back from this, but I could maybe do something like this. I can maybe do something like this for me and him. So after that day, I thought, like, why would you say something like that, uncle? Maybe I should do this, right? Maybe this is a thing that I should do. So after that, I signed up for the Pasadena Triathlon,
Mm,
and that was
yeah.
like my first step into endurance sport. Um, but yeah, like long story short, it was that event that really just kind of got me to want to chase down, uh, uh, endurance sports and racing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you telling that story, and actually I told a little bit of that story in my last podcast, um, doing the race review with Pat Ketchum, right after Oregon 70.3. And I remember that story so vividly, and I remember it a little bit of a different way, but I remember you saying that you were sitting there with your uncle, and he said, something to the effect of like, man, if I was healthy enough, that's something that would be cool, to do. Um, and again, like how that thing, that moment that you shared with your uncle, inspired you. And then, you and I went on a trip to Brazil the following year, right? 2010.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while we're on that trip, we started talking about, um, how your health is doing, and you were getting into triathlons, and you had signed up for, I think it was like Tri Rock or something like that. And I tell the story about how there was just a conflict, and I ended up not doing it. But the following, like a month later or 2 months later, I ended up doing the beginner try at Glorieta Bay, where I almost drowned, where I felt like I was almost drowning. And it's just the funniest thing how we come into these things. And Eric, you kind of have a similar story coming into endurance sports too, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, and again, I think that the more we talk to lifelong athletes, we're talking about the long game, the more there's always an origin story, right?
Yeah,
There's always
yeah,
one event or this one thing that happened in our life that just kickstarted this, again, lifelong passion for, wanting to push ourselves. Mine was an off-road triathlon. That was my first ever event. I had a $75 Walmart bike. I
right.
mean, it's those things.
Which
And,
one was it?
was that in Fresno, California, I no like Central California, and, I actually ended up getting 2nd place, and I didn't even know until I got a medal in the mail saying that I got 2nd place because I didn't know what I was doing, right? I just went and did this thing, right? So I can totally relate with how we, like, kickstart these. Again, it's just like passions. And so when I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, okay, we all, when we're younger, have these things we're either running from, running towards. And as we get older, what is it that inspires us to continue to do these things? Because
Yeah.
maybe we don't have these, pieces in our life that are maybe, needing some adjustment. We don't have anything we're having to have an outlet for. So how are you, as you get older, finding your passion in that fire? For me, I'm going to go on my run right now and it's like, it's going to be 95 degrees. Do I want to go? No.
Ugh,
But
yeah.
like, I need to say, okay, here's my why. So Ryan, how do you get up now and get after it?
Uh, you know, to quote David Goggins, is I stare at my shoes for 30 minutes and try to reconcile whether or not I should go out there. But
I love
it's a
it.
real thing. Like
It is.
uh, finding your why. You're finding out your why is a thing that motivates you. And my why, personally, my why is it is my therapy. It is a way for me to get to zero to start the day. If you start the day by doing something hard, by doing something difficult and challenging, everything else kind of comes secondary, right? It becomes easier to do things, even if you have a hard day ahead of you. If you go out for a ride or a run or a swim or a gym workout, it just makes life that much more manageable. So I think one of the things that is certainly like one of the most positive byproducts of being healthy and getting into endurance sports and just getting after it every day.
Hmm.
Um, you're taking care of yourself, which means that if you're taking care of yourself, you're also taking care of the people around you that you love. And
Absolutely.
if you're putting the effort into to caring for yourself, you're also caring for the people around you because you're able and willing to put in that work to make sure that everybody else around you is okay. Um, I also wanted to just give my kids like the impression or the idea that dad is getting after it, right? Like I want my
Sure.
kids to go, oh wait, dad's coming, I need to keep up with dad. I don't want them to think like, oh, dad's coming, we need to slow down and wait up for him. It's like, not today, kid. you know so I think like just being healthy and like taking, and as men, taking the time to like focus on our physical and mental health by staying in shape and just being able to burn those calories and get after it in the morning, I think is super important. And that's my why. My why is like it sets up uh it sets up my day, it sets up my week, and that way I can be much better at attacking life and life's problems, or dealing with life and everything that comes with it in a much better state.
So, do you still have those voices in your head that says, I don't want to go and do this workout?
all day.
What is the conversation that you have with yourself? Because, we like to portray that, hey, we're getting after it every single day. Like
Hmm.
the fluff, they see the rainbow, they see all these things that
They
we
see the
do, but
medals, right? Yeah,
yeah, what is the internal dialogue? That's what I'm searching for because it changes for me personally as an athlete getting older. What does that personal dialogue look like? What are you telling yourself?
I think the personal dialogue comes down to, what's prioritized, right? Like what's the priority for the day, for the week? What's the goal that you're um, inching forward to? What's moving the needle? Uh, it could be anything from a deadline at work to having to deal with different priorities at home to a race that's coming up. And I'm a firm believer in that the way you execute one thing is how you execute everything else. Um, and you also can't be 100% for everything all the time.
absolutely.
There's
Yeah.
some things that you're going to 50%. There's some things that you're even going to 25%, but you're still going to get it done. And it comes down to like, what is the priority? If I have a race coming up and I'm training for the race and on my training peaks, it says, oh, you need to do this thing. It's okay, I need to time box it, right? So I have this window to do that thing, and then that sets it up for me to go into time management for the other things that I have in my life to do. Um, if it's a work related thing, then it's like, well, I need to get like at least 30 minutes today into something so I can then get started on the thing that I need to do for work. Right. Then you have your life stuff that happens. It's like, you have to take the kid to the dentist or jujitsu, or, you have to, whatever it may be, at home, you have to balance out all this stuff. And the balancing, I think, is like the skill. I think putting in the time management into things is a skill, but sometimes you just get lazy, right? There's sometimes that voice in your head that says, maybe I'll just skip this thing. Maybe I'll just like go kind of half ass on this one thing and then go heavier into another thing. But I think the internal dialogue for me is more like, how much time do I have? How much energy do I have to go into something? And, you know, what mental state am I in? Am I angry? Am I happy? Am I motivated? Am I not motivated? Um, those are all things I take in consideration. But sometimes like when the clock starts ticking down and you look at your shoes and you get to like 29 minutes to trying to figure out whether or not you should go for that run. Once it hits 30, it's like, yo, I'm out the door, right? So sometimes it's like, like you get some time to like kind of reconcile with yourself and argue with yourself. But then it's like, I'm just gonna get out there and go halfway. And by the time I get halfway, I have to run back or I have to ride back.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's that inner dialogue that you have where you're just constantly arguing with yourself and looking for an excuse. It's kind of like when you're at a race and you're going balls out and you're just in pain and maybe there's like somebody right next to you that you're gunning against and you're just hoping and praying that you sprain an ankle or that you get a flat tire. It's like something just needs to stop because I'm going to beat the brakes out of myself. It's
Yeah.
that type of thing where it's like you still just need to keep going, right? So I think like the why, going back to the why is the thing that you just kind of need to tap into. You have to stop looking at things from a microscope and looking at the big picture. What's going to happen when you have a bigger world and you're focusing on what's in the future as opposed to what's just in front of you.
Yeah, right. A lot of what you said really resonates with me, as you know. I started triathlon in a very um, unique situation from all the rest of my friends, right? Like I was already married. I had 3 kids that were under 5. I think Jordan was 5. Elijah must have been 2. And then Noah was pretty much, a newborn, 6 months old or something like that when I got into triathlon. But I'd been running and biking for a long time, right? Even before my wife and I were met and were married. and triathlon takes up a lot of your time, right? And I had a really demanding job as well. My boss at that time was she was fiery, right? Like, and she wanted to make sure that that the job that we were doing, that she felt was very important, that we were committed to the job. So I was working a lot of nights and working a lot of weekends, and so it was really tough, like getting into the sport, um, trying to figure out like all of the things that kind of come along with trying to balance everything out. And so I went through a challenge of deciding whether or not this is something I could continue, right? And my wife Kim, who you know very well, she would always be like, dude, like, like you need to be here, right? You need to be here. You can't be, doing running, bike, and swimming every single day. So I had to figure out a way to make it work for both myself and my family, right? And so what I figured out was, okay, here are 2 days that I absolutely need. Which at that time was like Tuesday because we had a spin workout on Tuesdays at the bike shop at High Tech Bikes, where Eric and I met, and then Saturdays, right? Saturdays was a big day because that's when you put in your long bike and your run. And so like I committed to those 2 days. I talked to Kim and I'm like, these are the 2 days that I need. Everything else, like I'll figure out a way to make my swims and runs and bikes, right? And so that was the compromise that we had made until today. And even though my days have switched around a little bit, till today, like before I head out on Thursdays, Kim was like, "Hey, are you heading out for your bike ride on Thursday?" So she knows, like 20 years later, right? She knows. She's like, I know where you're going to be on Thursday, and then Saturday, she goes, "Who are you riding with?" So it's baked into our lifestyle at this point. And I think I talked about, and both of you, I think know this. I talked about in my last podcast that my middle one, Elijah, who was 3 when I started doing triathlons, he asked me, I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago, if he could sign up for a 70.3. He wants to do Oceanside. And I'm like, no, dude, you are not doing Oceanside 70.3 as your first triathlon. So we signed him up for SD Tri Classic, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. And he rode 40 miles last week. So I know he can do that. The bike ride at SD Classic is only going to be 22 miles with some hills, but he's going to be able to handle that. He's been swimming pretty consistently, better swimmer than I am. Most people are better swimmers than I am. And then he puts in the runs, right? So he's putting in the work. He's trained to be a firefighter also, so it kind of benefits him in the long run for physical demands that a firefighter needs to be able to do their job. So we're supporting that. But Ryan, as you were talking about like showing up, not just for ourselves and our mental health, but also, to show our kids that, hey, dad's still here and dad's still very, active and, like you can show up and try to beat dad, but dad's, going to be here to try to beat you too. Right. So I asked him actually, it's funny. I was like, should I race? And she was like, dude, you are not going to race. You're going to watch your son complete this trial.
Yeah, that's a question. That's a valid question.
Yeah.
Should you? Maybe for his first, you
Yeah.
watch, but his second, dad's
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I think like to roll it back to find to your why and to folding it into your lifestyle, right? I think that's super important. But finding out also in addition to, the why that gets you up every day, but it's the why that you're leading towards in terms of a goal that's a a a, a larger picture goal for you, right? So the thing that really got me kicked into like high gear when it came to training and racing was my uncle, Rudy, right? He suffered from Parkinson's, and um, I started racing for the National Parkinson's Foundation, started fundraising for that, and that turned things into now I wasn't running away from something, I was now running for something, and that was so much more powerful when I did that. When I started fundraising for the foundation, I think that right there showed my uncle that, it's like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing to help, like in some way, right? And I would, bring him photos of different races and training and stuff, and then he would, we would kind of connect there because he would like live vicariously through the things that I was doing. So I found that that was helping me. It was also helping him when I would visit him and show him, like, the different accounts of what it takes to get to a race.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, getting the bigger picture of things, like just finding a goal like on the map and just moving towards it, I think is something that, like, you need to stop thinking about how you feel at the moment and start thinking about how much closer to your goal are you going to get to every day.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the podcast, I was talking about people that do one Ironman and then people that come back and do another one. And you chased the legacy status, right? And I don't know how long it took you to get through. I think was it 10 or was it 12 to
With
complete the?
COVID, it was 12.
It was 12.
Yeah, the pandemic turned it into 12. It would have
Okay,
been 10,
it would
but
have been 10, right? Yeah, that's what I remember too. But you chased it and you got there. I mean, most people at the fifth or sixth one. I mean, I stopped at 3 full Ironmans. I'm like, my third one. I was just starting my MBA. I had a crazy demanding job. And at that point, I was like, dude, this is too much, right? And kids were playing a lot of, sports, and who knows, I might come back and do a full Ironman, but at that time, it was just like it was too much. How do you kind of maintain that focus on that goal? Because it is hard to do an Ironman like every single year, and sometimes two, right?
yeah, well, you have three on your under your belt. I mean, yeah, you can still do nine. Over the course of years, right? It's like,
Ugh, yeah,
and that's what I'm
yeah,
talking about, right? It's like
yeah,
you're just ticking it off, like you're getting
right,
closer and closer and closer,
right.
right? So yeah, I found myself in a position where I never say never, because I remember telling a bunch of my friends, at one of the game dev studios I was working, it's like, yeah, I'm on the bike, but I'll never wear tights. Look at me now. It's like, it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, oh, what kind of tights am I going to buy this year from Rafa or from like Lake Hole or whatever?
right,
And
right.
so it's never say never, right?
Yeah,
But um, yeah, I took the long way to get to the legacy status because, going back to, hanging out with my uncle, it was to get to the world championship, no matter what, right? Like, I wanted him to know that I was going to get to the world championship, to the thing that we are sitting down and watching. I wanted him to know that I was going to get in there no matter what. And, after doing like my first few long distance, like 70.3s and full distance Ironmans, it's like, I'm not going to win my age group. Let's just be honest here. But
yeah.
there
These
are
guys are just getting faster, man. Every year, dude. Every year they
dude,
just get faster.
they just
It's
get
crazy.
faster. Like,
Yeah,
there's always every race I do, there's always like some shredded, like, 60-year-old that's just
yeah,
like, come on, kid, keep up. And it's like,
yeah.
I want to be that guy when I get older.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, this being a lifestyle choice, I think, is one of the biggest things for executing the long game, right? It's a lifestyle choice. And for me to get to 13, you know, long story short, uh, when I started triathlon, it was because of the sleep apnea thing. I was recovering from that UPPP surgery. My uncle, uh, yeah, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. It was like, in addition to all that stuff happening all at once, um, one of my cousins was murdered in 2010. So that was something that was very hard on myself and the family. Um, so, I had to contend with that because he was a cousin that I grew up with, right? And we lost him, like, tragically. Uh, on top of that, um, I was at the time working at Infinity Ward, and we just shipped Modern Warfare 2. As we're rolling off of Modern Warfare 2, crazy business shenanigans went down. Uh, there was a lawsuit involved with hundreds of millions of dollars, and myself and 40 other of my colleagues were stuck right in the middle of it. So we left Infinity Ward to go start Respawn Entertainment. And starting up a new studio is not easy. So starting up a new studio, dealing with the loss of a family member, dealing with this newfound health that I've had, uh, jumping out of MMA and moving into endurance sports, because MMA I think was making me a little bit just more aggro than I should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Getting out and going for a bike ride and a run and a swim, those were things that grounded me and gave me like that peace that I needed. And having like all these things happen all at once gave me that fire, right? That's when you tap into that fire, that's when that questioning of yourself or that dialogue that you have with yourself just gets more succinct and to the point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, should I do it? It's like, yeah, you're gonna do it. You're gonna get out, you're gonna run because you need to put that energy somewhere. It needs to go somewhere positive. So having this stuff, like all these like, things that are just like drilling into your head, all this negativity, all these things that are just pulling at you to get you to say stop, I turn that into something where it's like, no, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to the thing that I need to do. And the thing that I need to do is get after it. So yeah, being able to do 13 Ironmans was just, for me, it's like, it was just prioritizing the things that I needed to do to feel like I uh, just needed to get the most out of life.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. Eric sent me a screenshot. It's been a few weeks now, but it was of his registration to Tahoe 200.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and of course, what does that mean, right? Like that means, hey, dude, you're pacing me for Tahoe 200 again. I paced Eric a few years back for Tahoe 200, and as you're kind of
Is
talking
that the one
about,
where you run the whole distance
Yeah.
or around it? Circumnavigate? Damn,
Yeah.
that's gnarly.
and it's a little bit more actually, because if you circumnavigated Tahoe, Eric, if I can remember correctly, it's not 200 miles, so you kind of have to like go do these out and backs to get to the 200, right?
So you can't go through wilderness, so that's the other portion why you have so much more. Because the trail itself, I think, is like 175.
Right,
So
right, right.
we just can't go through wilderness.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, as you were kind of talking about that, I think I was thinking about Eric's goal to get to, to Tahoe 200 and do it the way that, he needs to, and get through all of that. But it's suffering through 95-degree heat, right? On your run and doing those types of things. Like this season for me, training up to Oregon 70.3 was really, really hard. We had so much going on. Every single weekend there was something going on. And I had to, there were a lot of compromises made. I did more bike rides indoors. I would ride the following day, like in the middle of the day during the heat. So there were a lot of things that I had done. My swims weren't as consistent. And so there were a lot of missing pieces. But the goal that I was trying to chase was, my why is so that I could do this again, like tomorrow, right? And to continue to show up for my wife and my kids and the people around me. When I don't get that run in, like kind of like what you were saying earlier, Ryan, is if I don't get my run in, if I don't get my Thursday bike ride in with the guys that I ride with on Thursday, my week just doesn't feel complete. I'm not, I'm not starting at kind of like my zero, and and I go straight into, my day or the week with, just a little bit off, right? And so, that definitely resonates with me. I want to make sure that I get that workout in. And I think Eric, you get your workout in early in the morning as well. And getting that workout in first thing in the morning really starts your day off. And for those people that are listening to this, uh, just start moving, right? Like the David Goggins thing, I always visualize that, you stare at your shoes and you're like, should I go? Just keep moving. Like I lace up my shoes, I start walking on my treadmill, or I head out the door. I'm still wondering whether or not I'm going to hit 5 miles. Just go. Right. And 10 minutes in, you'll start to feel, that flow. 10 minutes becomes 20 minutes, minutes becomes 30, and then you can head back. But, just move.
I also think there's a lot of value into getting a coach. I think if I so shout out to Gerardo Barrios at 40th
Yeah,
Racing.
Coach G.
Yeah, Coach G. It was funny because like when I met Coach G, I was swimming at a pool up here in LA, and I look over and then there's like some coach coaching a swim group, and I'm like, wait, oh, is that what it looks like? Is that what like a swim group looks like? And I remember I saw like, their hoodie, Gerardo's hoodie said, 40th Racing or 40th Coaching. And I walked up and I was like, are you guys like triathlon athletes? And
Oh.
he's like, yeah, actually we are, we're training for a race. And, in talking with him, I then realized that, yeah, I could manage and, put my schedule together and get my race schedule, my training schedule put together for a particular race. But also, I in my line of work, I tend to lean on specialists, because
Mhm.
uh, you want to lean on people that are better than you at what you do. So I was like, hey, maybe I should work with this guy for a little bit. And yeah, like working with him, and just getting a coach in general, just to prioritize the goals that you have for getting to a particular race objective or a race goal, I think was a game changer for me. And he's also really good at like balancing the life of like a game developer, because in 40 years racing we had the highest concentration of game developers and Ironman triathletes
Yeah.
at one point.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's
Very
funny
interesting.
because like, with Respawn Entertainment, people were like, wait, you guys are developers? Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, we are developers. Like, what did you expect? And it was a lot of it was pushing against that paradigm or that image or that stigma of game developers being out of shape, you know. And Gerardo and 4 years coaching but they were really instrumental in helping out with that. So I think that's like a really good thing just to invest in for achieving your daily goals and just staying on the path of getting to an objective.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So when Eric and I kind of started ideating on this idea of, people that are operating, at a very high level within their organizations, but are still chasing big goals. One of the things that like I personally thought about was, you know, uh, I'm not at the top of my organization, but I manage a team, and I've managed teams, large teams and smaller teams in the past. And when I used to manage a really large team, I was really trying to, my focus was all on them, right? And making sure that they're taken care of, they're getting everything that they need, and that they were successful. And one of the things that I would tell them, because we had a very demanding job, was, hey, you need to go outside, get outside, make sure you're getting a good workout routine in, because like work is work. Work is going to be here tomorrow. Take care of yourself. But I wasn't doing the same thing for myself at that time. So for 6 or 7 years, so from 2018 to 2025, I took a break from triathlon because I was really just like focused on work, right? Like work was demanding and I needed to get that done. That being said, I was still doing some of Eric's events, like the trail duathlons. I did Belgian waffle. I think I did a couple of other like trail events. So I was doing that, but I completely stepped away from triathlon. And it was a good pause. It was a good reset button because when I came back to doing triathlon, and I did a sprint triathlon with our buddies, Mike and Antho, and we did a sprint triathlon for Mike was celebrating his recovery from lung cancer. My why at that time for coming back to doing a triathlon was because of the passing of our friend Fred. And Fred had talked about wanting to do a triathlon. Kind of was on and off about training, for a triathlon, and so we said, hey, let's do this for Fred. So we did the Chula Vista Challenge triathlon in 2024. for Fred. So that was my first triathlon coming back. And then I said, dude, I miss being a part of all of this, right? So I did Washington last year, and then I did um, Oregon this year. Next year, I'm coming back to Oceanside. So I'm going to do Oceanside, and then we'll see where that goes from there. I, I really think, and Eric, please chime in on this. I think there's a why, right, on why we do these things, but there's also like a much bigger um, reason why we choose to suffer, right? And Eric, maybe talk about your experience in wanting to sign up for Tahoe 200. I mean, that was a lot of suffering. I remember seeing you on those last few miles of Tahoe 200, and those were hard miles, right? Those are really, really hard miles, man. Can you talk to us a little bit? And I know we talked about this on our podcast, but tell people a little bit about those last few miles for you, and what kind of kept you going in those last few miles.
Yeah, you know what's funny is because I think about this stuff on every training run, my bike events, whatever I'm doing. Like, I always come back to those memories of, dude, you felt so bad at this time, but you kept going. Like, I don't know how I did it, but it compounds where I have all these tools now that I can utilize going into these larger events. Or again, I'm getting older, and this is why we're talking about this. And it's like, can I go for my 13th Ironman? Right? I mean, you know, can we build off of these things that we've basically earned? Right. And so for me, I still have this stuff creep in all the time, no matter how many things I have stacked up positively that I can achieve this. There's still those doubts in my mind. And like, I want to come full circle with this. I think a lot of it has to do with the people you have around you. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we could do this when we're younger by ourselves. And a lot of our training, either on the bike, on the run, or in the swim, are really by ourselves. And we spend so much time by ourselves that I really truly need like a community behind me, or I need
Absolutely.
this
Yeah.
podcast. I need these things that these other individuals that are trying to strive for this. Can I gain, some inspiration from them? And so that for me is how I think I continue to want to do these larger things, is because yes, I've done it, but I want to be able to share. I want to be able to learn from other people that are doing better than me. And, like
Hmm.
Ryan was saying, these guys coming that are 60 years old, jacked, it's like, what are they doing? But also it's like, I go back to my times where Mark and I were triathlon coaches, and I got so much out of coaching every single week that it made me a better athlete. And I miss that a lot, to be
Yeah.
honest,
Yeah.
because again, I think, as Ryan, as you're getting back, I mean, do you find yourself wanting to go for those solo, training runs, or bike, rides, or are you wanting to get into groups? Like, what is that I
It,
think for the
I think
community?
it's I think it's a little bit of both, really, because you kind of want to introspective, right? You want to be able to have that space for yourself, just to run without music or listen to a podcast. I
Mhm.
listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks when I run. So it's like, oh, I want to know what happens next in this chapter.
Right.
Uh, so
Right.
that's something that I'm like, that's like a thing that I do just to, motivate myself to get out there. But I do think like mixing it up with groups, like doing group rides, group runs is a whole lot of fun. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? Like
Yeah.
when you get a bunch of crazy friends together and it's like, oh, let's go climb this thing because there are donuts afterwards, or
Right.
let's grab a beer after this, and
Right.
that's like a social thing that we all need and crave. Um, I think that right there it's a big part of this endurance community, is to tap into that and notice that you're not alone is one thing. We do all this stuff alone a lot of the times, but
For
you're
sure.
not alone, right? When you're at a race, you're there with so many different people. When you're training, you run into like friends of yours. And I think just reminding yourself that you're not alone is a big part of it. But I do think like that extra motivation that you need, to get to the end of like the last 2 miles of an Ironman, is you need to tap into like that dark place, right? You need to tap into uh, that place that you don't necessarily need to go all the time, but when you need to pull from it, you can. And I was telling somebody this story recently about Ironman, really. Like, you get to mile 24 on the marathon and you're beat up. You're just completely drained of everything, and you need to get to that last 2 miles. You can hear the finish line usually. Usually you can hear Mike Riley, you hear the muffled, "You're an Ironman." It's like, okay, I
Yeah.
need to get there. And through all the races that I've done, the big ones, it's all been kind of like me talking to the people that I've lost in my life. Like,
Mm.
hey guys, I know you guys are looking down wherever you're at. I can use a little bit of help here. It's like, just shoot me down like a lightning bolt of energy, right? And then usually that comes in the form of Coca-Cola or Red Bull, and then you can gun it into the finish line. But the thing that was much different for me in Kona was, instead of me like asking for like, hey, I need some like angelic support here, right, for the last 2 miles. Um, as I came down, you know, off of Palani and then came onto Ali'i Drive, where you see the banyan tree
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
crowd, and I knew like, I knew that my wife and then my kid and a bunch of our friends were there. I knew that they were going to be there, and I remember thinking in my head, I've seen this so many times on television, on NBC. Uncle Rudy and I, we did this whole thing where, he saw it and he told me, he knocked me into this place where I was now motivated to do this race. It, instead of me asking for help and saying like, hey guys, I need some help, it was more like, okay, we're here,
Yeah, yeah.
and it
I
was
love that.
like, thank you. Yeah, thank you to all the people that have gotten me here, like all the people that I've loved and lost, like all the people that have passed away. It's like, now you're here with me, right? I'm gonna finish this damn thing. I'm gonna go see my family and friends, and I'm going to be able to enjoy life and be able to like finish this race. And I'm doing it for the people that can't. And I think that's so much more powerful, because if you're doing things for someone who can't, it motivates you so much more, right? We're able to do this stuff. We're healthy. We're it are The problems that we're running into are, can we do this fast or not? Right? Not whether or not
Right,
we can.
right.
There are people that are sitting there that cannot, that do not have a choice. And that's something that's very powerful, once you realize that there are people that cannot do it, or they can't do it because they're no longer around.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, that's the thing where it's like, you start feeling sorry for yourself during a race, and that's what you tap into. That's the thing that I tap into when I'm like, okay, like I'm
yeah,
done feeling sorry for myself.
yeah,
Like, I need to use this energy to put it into something positive.
yeah. No, there are definitely a lot of ups and downs, and I've seen the ups and downs as an athlete participating in the race. I've also seen it from the outside looking in when I'm pacing, people like Eric who are chasing, even crazier things like Tahoe 200. Um, and I was going to talk about this in my podcast with Pat, and I decided not to. Um, but when we lost Sabas, right? Uh, it changed all of us, right? I mean, he was a brother, right? Like I've known the guy since I was 4 years old. I'm getting emotional just even talking about it. But a week prior, or 2 weeks prior to my Oregon 70.3 half Ironman, it was hot. It was the day after July 4th. I started my bike at like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So by the time I got off my bike, it was noon or 1 o'clock. And it was like, I don't know, it was close to 90 degrees at that point. And I'm like, I just need to get through my run. And it was like 8 by 1 mile intervals at race effort or something like that. I got to like the third or fourth one. I was like, hmm, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, dude, I'm freaking done. I'm like sweating like profusely. I also got stung by a bee coming down Torrey Pines or coming out of Del Mar into Torrey Pines. And so I was at that point, I was like, I had a headache. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And all I heard was, don't fucking quit. Right.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
don't fucking quit. And it wasn't, I didn't say it. I just heard this voice that just said, don't fucking quit. And I was like, yeah, all right, let's just get it done. Right. And got it done. I didn't talk about it, to anybody else. This is the first time that I'm actually outwardly like telling the story. And I thought about it during the actual race itself. Right. I'm in the middle of the race and I'm just like, dude, this really sucks. I could walk for the next 3 miles and yeah, I'd be all right. I'd still have a pretty decent time. And again, I heard it again, right? Don't fucking quit. And yeah, I was able to finish the race with a respectable time. But again, it's not about that anymore. It really is like a lot of what you're saying, Ryan. It's doing it, for the people around you and doing it
Maybe
for community, right?
maybe you getting stung by the bee was the universe like gently kicking you in the ass, right?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
like I go into like the superstition, like metaphysical aspect of things. It's like, yeah, this is a sign, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe Fred was the bee and he's like, you know what, hey, don't fucking quit, and you stung you.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know.
I
So, something
I'm
like that for sure.
I'm a firm believer in like little things like that. Just things telling you to do things is is something that, we should kind of all just tap into and embrace, right? Because yeah, it's a short amount of time. It's a small fraction of time that we just need to go balls out. Because a year later, or the next day, or 6 months later, you're gonna think like, damn, I should have went just a little bit harder,
Yeah.
right? Or I
Yeah.
should have just gotten after it just a little bit, or I should have been more consistent, should have been more steady. Having those shoulds is the thing that kills me. You
Yeah.
know,
I love that, man.
yeah,
And I know you got to run, so like that actually is a really good transition into the last couple of things I wanted to make sure that we asked you.
yeah,
Um
yeah,
and getting to that point in your life, right? Like you're like all of our Uncle Rudy's in our lives, right? Or people that are not in good health, that aren't able to do the things that we do. There are still plenty of people that 1000% have everything that we have, right? Like they've got able bodies and minds and they can, it's never too late, right? They can chase big goals. Right. Especially again, this particular series, we're talking about people that are operating at the top levels of their respective organizations. Like what advice would you give somebody, right, who is operating at the top of their organization, or even, they have a pretty like heavy job, right? What advice would you give them to like kind of like maybe consider or even take on a big goal like an Ironman or an ultra marathon, that may like help them kind of balance things out?
yeah. Like there was a point in time, and I'll bring up Gerardo again. There was a point in time where, it when I was training for Ironmans or whatever races that I had on my schedule, and I had like a crazy insane delivery schedule where we're shipping a game. Um, I remember chatting with my coach, and I told him like, look, man, things are getting heavy, right? Like I don't know if I can hit these goals that we have on Training Peaks. And he fired back with, this is where you now need to check in and hit those, and whatever goals you have, you need to hit them even harder, or just
Mm,
be more consistent about achieving those goals. And uh, the goals that I had at work versus the goals that I had on Training Peaks, it's like, yeah, okay, dialing in and now just being more deliberate about my time is something that I needed to do. And to kind of roll it back to something that you were talking about earlier, Mark, with getting your teams to get out there and do something. um, I would do the same thing. It's like, hey, why don't you guys like go out and do something like physical? And I realize that like not everyone wants to do endurance sports.
yeah.
Not everyone wants to do MMA. Not
Hmm.
everyone wants to do the same things that we do. So the thing that I would bring up, and the advice that I have for a lot of like professionals out there, is know when to detach. Just that word itself, it's like, hey, maybe you need to detach for a bit. It's all good. Go do something, right? Take a day, maybe even a week if you're that burnt out. But burnout is real. And when you tell somebody it's okay to detach, then it gives them the permission to say, oh, like you want me to care for myself. And
Yeah,
that's also the
absolutely.
lens that I give it, that I look at things from, and I try to perceive that, or project that to the people that I work with. It's like, hey, detach for a bit. It's all good. We got this. Like, just come back when you feel like you're ready. And usually, when that happens, when you detach from something that's like pulling everything out of you, you're able to create that space and fill your cup so you can come back to the thing.
Yeah,
So
love that.
yeah, know when to detach, know when to just step away for a bit and go do something that will will make you feel like yourself again.
Yeah, dude, I love that. I love that. Eric, I'll let you ask another question, and then I have one last one before we let Ryan go.
Yeah. For me, the big thing that I've been focusing on is dreaming. And
Mm,
so I want to know what that looks like for you. I mean, you just talked
for me.
about being able to, step aside and take care of yourself and have that time. And for me, it's giving myself space to dream because it fills me with this sense of, I can do things that maybe I can't do now, but I can do later. And also to be young again, right? To have these aspirations that I did. So what does dreaming look like for you?
Dude, I love that so much. That's like, yeah, from one one creative to another, that's how
Yeah.
we live, right? We live through dreams. We live through setting these like really crazy, insane goals that, we have to put them into a position where they're now achievable as opposed to just being dreams. And, do you guys know Andy Stump, the podcaster and author? Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard
So,
of him. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he wrote a book, and then in his book, he states, and it's a Navy SEAL thing. It's about making your world small, right?
Mm,
Um, in Hell Week or in Buds, he has this thing about making your world small. It's not about getting to the end of Hell Week. If you think on Monday and you have to make it to what is it, end of Friday,
right, right,
like, oh, this is crazy. How
right,
how am I going to get to the end of Hell Week?
right.
It's going to be insane. How do I get to the end of 140.6 miles? It's crazy to think about it. But if you make your world small, then it makes those dreams achievable. Making your world small means getting to the next meal in Hell Week, getting to the next aid station at a
Mm,
race.
yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're taking these little slices of things where this whole big chunk of something is seems impossible. But now since you're taking little slices out of things, it makes those dreams much more achievable. So having those dreams for me is I need to have those dreams because I need to have a North Star to head towards. But in order for me to get to that North Star, I need to make my world small. And that making your world small, it makes it easier for you to get up every day to go for that run, to go for that bike, to do that little thing that you need to get there. Just move the needle forward a little bit every day.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. All right, last question for you, man. I know you got to run. Um, so with all of this being said, right, and again, the name of this podcast is the long game. Um, at this point in your life, what does the long game mean to you?
So long game for me is, I've gone through this whole experience of, taking the long road to the world championship. Uh, I've recently just, gone under the knife for a few surgeries. So I had a cerebral spinal fluid leak, which was a gnarly procedure to go through. I had a torn hamstring. I after I did Kona, I was
Jeez.
like, hey, I'm going to jump back into jujitsu again. And then lo and behold, the first match, the first roll that I had completely snapped my hamstring off of the
Oh,
rope.
Jesus.
So recovery has been a little gnarly. I've had some follow-up procedures. Um, yeah, it's just a lot slower, but the long game for me is, uh, you know, start putting more. goals out there through dreaming, right? Like, what are the other things that I want to do outside of just trying to get to the world championship,
Yeah.
right? Like going out for fun rides, going out for, like doing a Ragnar with a bunch of, dumbass game friends,
Yeah.
right? That's another one. The long game for me is, focus on getting the kids out to college, uh, having this extra time to devote to my career, to my work, to my family, but also just being capable for me is the long game. Capability is one where it's like if you just jump off of the couch and you're able to do a 70.3, then that's where I want to be. Um, I mean, yeah, between the three of us, I think we can do that, to varying degrees, but just being capable is something that's very important to me. And the capability of just getting up and being able to do something is, for me right now, the objective that I have. Um, I do want to get back into 70.3. I do want to get back potentially to get to, doing another full Ironman someday. Um, but right now it's just maintain, uh, keep the health up, keep the dad bod away, you know, but yeah, just stay healthy. And yeah, we're at time. Thank you guys for having me. This has been awesome. Um, I'm down to come back again if you guys want. We could talk about some other stuff. Like we didn't even dive into work.
I know. And that's the thing this podcast will most likely go out to LinkedIn as well. I have a big LinkedIn following, and, I get to share this with coworkers. It just came out one day that I've got a podcast. So then I was like, all right, here's the link. And so now I've got a following at work. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to dive into this particular series too, is that, people often like look at or hear about, the podcast or triathlon in general. They're like, wow, like how do you have time to do this? And again, it's like you gotta make time, you've gotta have a really strong why. It does make me a lot more efficient just in general. And it does keep me focused, at work. Like I'm laser focused, making sure that I'm getting all the things that I need to get done so that when I transition into training, I'm not thinking about work or when I'm with my family, I'm not thinking about work and I'm not thinking about training, right?
You got to
Um,
make the time. Winners
absolutely.
make the time.
Yeah.
That was a quote that was on the wall of one of the MMA studios I trained at. Was winners make the time. And I remember walking in seeing that, and I'm like, oh, whatever. But later on, yeah,
Right.
when you're throwing up on yourself
Yeah.
on like mile 49 of a 50-mile ultra, it's like I got to make the time.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Eric,
So
any
yeah,
closing thoughts before we let Ryan go?
You are an inspiration, and I hope that you continue to push your limits and inspire those individuals like us that are still searching and reaching. But also, I hope some of the younger generation coming up, they know that they can have a career at a high level and still have fun. So,
for
you,
the younger generation, keep up.
Yeah,
yeah,
dude. Love
Keep
that.
up, kids.
Yeah. All right, well, guys, I know everyone's got to run, so again, appreciate your time, Ryan. Eric, thanks for joining me as my co-host on this series. Guys, tune in for this series. We'll have 5 or 6 episodes that are going to be focused on guys like Ryan that are, operating again at the top of their organizations and still chasing big goals. And we'll talk about a lot of the similar things that we talked to Ryan about. So hope to see you guys out there and keep listening to the podcast. All right, guys. See ya. Bye.
Cheers. See y'all.